are you? And it is cold in my hometown right now, just like it used to be in my life. It was just cold and filled with failure. But why don't you come join me on a journey and come into the warmth of God's blessing and increase, and just follow me. Come on.
You know, it's funny, when you have a Christian home and you really feel like you're, you know, sold out to the Lord as a family, a husband and wife, and you raise your kids, you know there's going to be problems down the road, but I think you really still believe that you're going to have, your kids are going to follow in the footsteps that you have laid out as far as loving Christ and spiritual life. And so it was very traumatic when Scott, we could see him getting into rebellion and just wanting so much, we could tell, to leave his roots and to get away from what we knew was the right path and go to what we also knew was the wrong path.
He was a very, very intelligent boy. Like in 3rd grade, he was reading 9th and 10th grade level of high school reading and he was very intelligent. I remember when he was in high school, his counselor looked across the desk at me and he said, "You know you're raising a genius." But all those things didn't seem to matter to Scott. It was like he was driven by an evil spirit within him to get away from what he had been taught all his life, to know what's good and right. And it started probably 12 or 13. He was in the middle school, and day after day the principal would call me, as before caller ID was even invented. And Mr. Urbane would call and he'd say, "Scott's doing this, Scott's throwing chairs, Scott's hitting kids, or they're hitting him," and he's just giving the teacher a hard time. And it was a very stressful time in our life. In fact, my husband, Scott's dad, was having chest pains at that time, and I kept encouraging him to go to the doctors, and he did, and the doctor had said he had a heart attack, and he didn't even know it. And Scott was just wild and just wanted to be away from us as much as he could. He would sneak out at night when he got a little older, be with his friends. We didn't even know he was gone until, you know, years later. And I remember one night, it was a Saturday night before church, and we had all gone to bed. Scott was in bed asleep, and the kids were asleep, and I had this terrible dream about Scott, that he was at a party, and that he was drinking and taking drugs, and everybody was around a bonfire. They were jumping around and dancing and doing all sorts of wild things. And so I woke my husband up, and I said, "I just had a terrible dream about Scott, and he's not in his bed, he's out of the house." And my husband had to preach the next morning, and I didn't want to wake him up, and we didn't know what to do. We didn't have the slightest idea where to find him. And so he got his clothes on, and he went up into town at the...
Well, I went down and saw he was gone.
Right. First he went down to see he was gone, and then he went up into town to the party store. It was called Forwards. And happened to be a policeman there, and he said, "Do you know of any parties around?" Because I felt like this was a dream from the Lord. I didn't feel like it was just a dream, you know, just dreaming, because I'd never dreamed anything like that before. And so he went out and he said, "Yeah, I just came from Cabin Lake Road, and there's a big party going on." I tried to quiet him down. So my husband, he told him how to get there, and he went out. And this was like 3 o'clock in the morning. And he went and he found this party, and it was exactly how I dreamed. There was a big bonfire, and all these kids are dancing, taking drugs, and drinking. And Scott wasn't there. He was inside the house. So my husband went in and he tried to find him, and Scott came out and went home, and we all got up and we went to the church the next morning. But in my mind, I thought, God warned me. I don't know. Only time and eternity will know what saved Scott from that night. He might have overdosed on drugs and been killed if it wasn't for the grace of God. I know the Holy Ghost gave me that dream.
And then one day, I just sat him down at the table, at that same table in that house, the double wide, and I felt like the Lord gave me a seed of wisdom, a discernment about His Spirit and our relationship. And I finally looked at him and I said, he was sitting right across from me at the table, and I said, Scott, the devil has lied to you all these years. He's told you we were rotten parents, or we weren't. And believe me, there's lots of things we could have done better. But by and large, we had a good Christian home. And I said, Scott, he's lied to you. He's put a wedge between you and me, and you have believed everything Satan has told you about your parents. You've accepted those lies that we were this or we were that, and you need to come against that. We need to pray right now that we have identified a source of satanic work that has come in between us and destroyed our relationship. And as I was saying this, tears were just streaming down his face. And I remember thinking, he's getting it. He's receiving it. And again, it wasn't that I was all right in my fatherly duties and he was necessarily all the wrong. But I really do believe Satan had spoke lies to him and deceived him about our love for him and our intentions and future, and we prayed, and I really believe I think that was a turning point in him coming back to us. And
that same day is the day that Dave came over and prayed over him those prayers of deliverance.
But only Scott really knows then how he came really fully back to the Lord. I mean, I remember calling me in the middle of the night saying, Dad, I think I'm going to die. It was the last thing I wanted to hear from my son. It couldn't happen. I couldn't let it happen.
And things just continually got worse. I was just in a downward spiral of just basically trying to mask off the pain that I had inside, because I was just so distraught that I'd never finished high school. I wasn't using any of my gifts or talents. And it was just like a wake-up call, and I'm like, man, what am I doing? I can leave Detroit, come to North Carolina, I'm still partying, things aren't changing. They started coming to my house to party, and I was just getting sick of it. I was really getting sick of it, and I was upstairs in my room with my girlfriend and my cousin. We were all laying on a bed and smoking weed, just doing some drugs, and watching TV. And a church commercial came on about a church, and this pastor was talking, and just tears just started streaming down my face, and I'm like, man, that is what I need. I need God. I've tried everything. There's nothing that I haven't tried, and there's no fulfillment in my life. I need God. And at that very moment, the Lord came in the room. There was a presence of something I had never felt, and from that moment forward, I've never been the same. I was healed of drug addiction, alcohol addiction, sex, all the things that I was wrapped into. I was literally delivered in that second. And from that day forward, I have never been the same. But I have been richly blessed. And if I can do it, and if God will use me, someone that spit in His face for 12 years and did everything that could be wrong, He can do it for you. I can guarantee that, because God is no respecter of persons.